What if the Earth were a cube? Right now, you live on a giant ball, but if the planet were a six-sided block, the physics of our world would break. Gravity on a sphere pulls the same way everywhere, but on a cube, the corners are much farther from the center than the flat sides. This simple change in shape completely destroys the atmosphere, the oceans, and the ground beneath your feet. The biggest problem is how gravity pulls at your body, because it always points toward the exact center of the cube. Gravity only pulls straight down when you stand in the dead center of a flat side, acting like a powerful magnet hidden in the middle of a box. As you walk toward an edge, the ground stays flat, but gravity begins to pull you backward at a sharp angle. This makes walking toward a corner feel like climbing a steep hill of glass, even though your eyes see a level plane. The Earth's atmosphere cannot cover a cube because the 8 corners stick out too far into space. The air settles into 6 separate pockets of gas, with one sitting in the middle of each flat face like a dome. Because the corners and edges are 3,000 kilometers higher than these centers, they pierce right through the air and reach into the vacuum of space. If you tried to stand on an edge, there would be no air to breathe, and the lack of pressure would cause your blood to boil from your own body heat. The oceans on this world are 6 isolated circular pools of water trapped in the center of the flat plains. Gravity pulls every drop of liquid to the lowest point of each face, creating 6 deep seas that look like puddles in a shallow bowl. The edges and corners of the cube are bone-dry deserts of bare rock, because water is physically incapable of staying on the high slopes near the corners. There are no global currents to move heat around, so the centers of the faces become boiling hot while the corners remain frozen graveyards. A cube is a physically unstable shape for a planet, because the heavy corners put too much stress on the interior. The hot core pushes out while the massive weight of the corners presses down, causing the planet's internal skeleton to snap like a wooden chair under too much weight. This creates constant, violent earthquakes along the 12 edges where the rock is ground into dust. These edges eventually become glowing cracks that bleed the Earth's internal heat directly into the cold vacuum of space. The planet's magnetic shield also fails because the sharp corners disrupt the flow of liquid metal inside the core. In a sphere, this metal flows smoothly to create a protective magnetic bubble, but in a cube, the internal engine stalls and the field vanishes. Without the shield, the solar wind hits the atmosphere like a continuous sandstorm, stripping away the air and dragging it into the void. The Earth begins to trail a massive tail of gas like a dying comet, losing its life support systems piece by piece. The spinning of the planet becomes a violent mechanical wobble because a cube does not rotate smoothly like a ball. This uneven weight distribution makes the entire planet shake, with high-frequency vibrations that are strong enough to shatter the crust. The friction from this constant shaking creates even more heat inside the rocks, turning the interior of the cube into a vibrating furnace. The planet eventually reaches a breaking point where the mechanical stress destroys the possibility of any stable environment. The light of the sun also behaves differently on a cubic planet because of the way the air sits on the flat faces. On a round Earth, the atmosphere curves with the ground, scattering light evenly to create a blue sky. On a cube, the air is only thick in the center of each side and thins out rapidly as you move toward the edges. If you stand near the boundary of a face, the sky above you turns pitch black even in the middle of the day. You can see the stars and the sun at the same time, because there isn't enough gas to scatter the light. This creates a lethal thermal gradient, where your front is burning in direct solar radiation while your back is freezing in the shadow of the vacuum. The planet's orbital mechanics become a chaotic mess because a cube cannot maintain a stable satellite network. On a sphere, gravity is uniform, allowing satellites to glide in smooth circles. On a cube, the gravity field is lumpy and irregular, pulling harder when a satellite passes over the massive corners and weaker over the flat centers. This constant tug-of-war acts like a physical hammer, smashing satellites out of their orbits or dragging them down into the atmosphere. Communication systems and GPS would be physically impossible to maintain, leaving each of the 6 faces in total electronic isolation from the rest of the universe. In its final state, the cubic Earth is a broken system of 6 disconnected islands. These habitable zones are separated from each other by walls of tilted gravity and the lethal vacuum of the corners. Life cannot move from one side to another, leaving the planet as a collection of 6 separate stone prisons. The Earth remains a geometric anomaly, a world of 6 isolated, pressurized cells trapped in a permanent state of cold and silence.